we give thanks for this most faithful life. I am deeply aware of this great inheritance and of the duties and heavy responsibilities of sovereignty.
King Charles just had the absolute ugliest fight with Camilla, and she deserves every single bit of what is coming next. She was caught red-handed doing the exact thing the palace warned her to never touch, and this time King Charles absolutely refused to look away. He cut her off entirely and handed complete royal authority right over to Prince William and Kate Middleton. Camilla has been left with absolutely nothing, stripped of all her power and leverage, and she is completely furious. The desperate moves she is making right now behind closed doors have palace insiders feeling genuinely terrified. Because what Camilla is quietly plotting in the shadows is far more than just a simple response. It is a direct threat to everything this fragile monarchy has left, and the absolute worst of it has not even started yet. The shocking arrest changed everything, starting the disaster of Charles, giving William authority, while Camilla did something so wild it completely ruined all of King Charles's plans, starting with the epic downfall of Prince Andrew, the king's own brother. The 19th of February 2026 started like any other freezing winter morning in Norfolk, England. But before that fateful day ended, the British royal family was dragged straight into the absolute darkest crisis of its modern existence. Police cruisers pulled up outside a quiet country estate, and Prince Andrew, the king's own brother, was placed under arrest on his 66th birthday. Breaking news tonight: Prince Andrew is officially under arrest, facing charges of misconduct in public office. But the dark truth behind that charge was so explosive it made the entire nation of Britain freeze in shock. While serving as a British trade envoy between 2010 and 2011, Andrew had allegedly been leaking highly classified government intelligence directly to the notorious Jeffrey Epstein, the American billionaire who spent years abusing underage girls while collecting dark, compromising secrets about some of the most powerful elites in the world. This was no longer just a simple family embarrassment. This was a national security disaster wearing a royal face. To understand why this moment cracked the absolute foundation of the monarchy, you must grasp who Jeffrey Epstein actually was. Epstein was never just a common criminal. He was a strategic predator who built a whole system designed to access, compromise, and control powerful global figures. Epstein managed to draw powerful politicians, massive billionaires, and elite celebrities into his web, and every single one of them harbored secrets they desperately kept from the world. The horrifying reality that a senior British royal had been feeding this monster highly classified government secrets was the kind of nightmare revelation that did not just destroy reputations. It raised the deeply terrifying question of exactly how much damage. That exact same morning, King Charles was sitting deep inside Buckingham Palace, his body still being eaten away by a brutal cancer battle. Meanwhile, news of his brother's shocking arrest was flashing across every single television screen in Britain, but here is the exact detail that made critics completely furious. Word leaked that Charles was not surprised at all, not even close. According to a Radar Online insider, Charles had actually known the entire time. He knew exactly what Andrew had done and what he truly was. Yet he stared the entire British public straight in the face and said absolutely nothing. The most powerful royal family in the land had actively protected a predator, keeping him hidden on purpose. And the evidence backing up that claim was not thin. Intelligence officials confirmed that Andrew's activities had been under active surveillance for several years, and those detailed surveillance reports were delivered directly to Buckingham Palace on numerous occasions. But royal officials chose to completely sit on the information. Every single step ever taken against Andrew only happened when mounting public outrage made silence far more dangerous than total exposure. His 2019 retreat from royal duties following that disastrous BBC Newsnight interview happened solely because the public demanded it. Andrew had sat directly in front of the television camera and boldly claimed he had absolutely no memory of ever meeting Virginia, the victim who accused him of forcing unwanted intimate encounters on her when she was only 16. The angry public did not believe a single word, and stripping his titles in 2025 only happened because Virginia had tragically taken her own life by then. She never lived to see true justice, yet the memoir she left behind after her death dropped with such devastating raw detail that the royal palace simply could not keep Andrew's reputation clean, no matter how desperately they tried. Royal biographer Andrew Looney, who spent years researching the scandals of the House of York, stated publicly that the palace was likely complicit in actively perverting the course of justice, meaning King Charles must now step down from the throne. American Congressman Ro Khanna, who helped co-author the crucial Epstein Transparency Act, went even further, declaring that stripping Andrew of his titles was nowhere near enough. He insisted that Charles owed the British public a direct, fully honest account of exactly what he knew and when he knew it, and citizens were already screaming that very question at Charles. On October 27, 2025, Charles had travelled to Lichfield Cathedral in Staffordshire for a public walkabout, arriving to meet local community groups, volunteers and excited well-wishers. Thousands of eager citizens lined the streets to cheer loudly for the king, as it was supposed to be a warm, highly positive public appearance. But then one angry man broke straight through the crowd and screamed directly into Charles's face, "How long have you actually known about Andrew and Epstein? Did you personally ask the police to cover up for Andrew? How long have you known about Andrew and Jeffrey Epstein? Did you ask the police to, but Charles just kept walking?" He waved calmly at the crowd, shifted to the other side and said absolutely nothing. That cold silence was far more damning than any actual answer he could have given. A savant poll conducted during that exact same period revealed that only 45% of British adults still supported the monarchy, a shocking figure that would have been entirely unthinkable just a few years earlier. A YouGov survey revealed that 51% of the public believed the royal family desperately needed to respond far more forcefully to the ongoing Epstein scandal. The royal family was hemorrhaging public trust in real time, and the very man at the centre of the scandal was literally turning his back and walking away from the press. To make things even more painful, this shocking arrest was ripping Prince Andrew's own family apart right from the inside. His daughter, Princess Eugenie, had cut her father off completely, reportedly consumed by pure rage at his absolute refusal to look any of Jeffrey Epstein's victims in the eye and apologize to them. Her sister, Princess Beatrice, was still in very limited contact, but was described by royal sources as crushed by deep shame, barely able to hold herself together under the heavy weight of what her father had become. These were Andrew's own daughters, his own flesh and blood, and even they could no longer stand behind him. Within hours of the arrest, Prince William was already in motion. He called his team and personally started building the response strategy himself, and the sheer speed of his reaction told you everything. This was not a man simply reacting to surprise. William had been sounding the alarm about Andrew for years, ever since that trainwreck BBC interview in 2019 where the prince sat across from a reporter and casually brushed off devastating allegations, leaving the entire nation absolutely horrified. William went straight to both Charles and the late Queen Elizabeth, demanding that Prince Andrew be stripped of his duties and removed from public life immediately. He warned them that the very survival of the royal family mattered far more than keeping one man comfortable, but they completely shut him down. Queen Elizabeth, who had always loved Andrew with a fierce protective devotion, refused to take real action against him. Charles felt completely paralysed between his mother and his own instincts. William kept pushing until those palace walls went completely deaf. Now the absolute catastrophe he had warned them about had arrived in its most devastating form, and the exact same royal family who dismissed his warnings was suddenly desperate for him to clean up the wreckage. But as William took total control of the crisis response, something was unfolding inside the palace walls that would pour fuel on a fire that was already raging, and it had everything to do with Camilla. While all of this chaos was unfolding, Camilla was actively on the phone. She was calling Sarah Ferguson, the ex-wife of the royal, who had just been arrested, pouring deep comfort and loyalty into a woman whose name was scattered all through those notorious Epstein files. At the exact same moment, the palace was desperately scrambling to cut every visible connection to anyone touched by the scandal. When word of that call reached William, it did not look like some innocent mistake. It felt like a direct challenge. From that very moment, William understood that the massive crisis threatening to consume the entire monarchy was not just coming from outside the palace walls. A major part of it was sitting right beside the king, and he was not planning to wait very long before doing something about it. But to truly feel the heavy weight of what William has taken over, you must first understand what it has cost the man he took it from. That means looking at the dying king and the son who took over. Charles became king back in September 2022 at 73 years old. He was the oldest person in British history to take the throne. He had been the heir apparent since 1952, which means he spent 70 long years in waiting. Those 70 years of watching, preparing, and standing in the shadow of a mother who outlived every single expectation. Charles actually became a grandfather before he ever wore the crown. No other human being in the history of the British monarchy had waited longer or more patiently for the exact moment that was supposed to define his entire life. And then just 17 short months after that crowning moment finally arrived, cancer came knocking on his door. The specific type was never once disclosed to the general public, but treatment began immediately, and the heavy physical toll very quickly became completely impossible to hide. Then, as if that was not already more than enough to break any man, came March 2024, when Kate Middleton announced her own shock cancer diagnosis following major abdominal surgery, and stepped back from all public duties for months of grueling chemotherapy. Within 6 weeks, both the king and the wife of his heir were fighting cancer at the exact same time. The British monarchy was bleeding from every single direction at once, and the man supposed to be steering the ship was barely keeping himself upright. Into that power vacuum William moved. He did not arrive with grand speeches or flashy press releases. Instead, he moved quietly, decisively, and with a laser focus that left absolutely no room for misunderstanding about where power was heading. The first visible sign came in 2025, when King Charles handed William and Kate the authority to issue royal warrants, which is the official right to publicly endorse brands and products on behalf of the crown. This might sound like a minor, boring administrative detail, but it was absolutely anything but. Monarchs had always kept this privilege locked incredibly tightly in their own hands. Handing it over was a major signal, and everyone inside the palace read it loud and clear. But the warrants were only the beginning of what was being transferred. The real shift was happening inside the Andrew crisis, and it was moving fast. Over the 6 months leading directly up to that February 2026 arrest, William had become the person making every major decision involving Andrew. The total removal of his titles in October 2025, the carefully engineered eviction from Royal Lodge, and every single public statement that came out of the palace about the matter had William's fingerprints all over it. One royal source told News International that Charles was actively guiding William to make wise choices, fully knowing the future of the monarchy rested entirely with the Prince and Princess of Wales. But when you strip away the diplomatic language, what that actually meant was this. Charles had stopped leading. He was basically being carried. William's highly modern approach to the monarchy was also something entirely fresh, and it was making the old royal guard deeply uncomfortable. While Charles always operated through tradition and personal instinct, and a deeply personal attachment to both ceremony and historical continuity, William was approaching the institution like a corporate chief executive who had inherited a major company in crisis. He demanded clear reporting structures, strict professional accountability, and absolute zero tolerance for anyone inside the organization who was causing major reputational damage. William had already demonstrated this modern style through the exact way he ran his royal foundation, the charity he operates with Kate, which functions with an actual chief executive, a formal board of directors, clearly published goals, and regular public updates. He fully intended to bring that exact same model to the monarchy itself. One former royal aide described William's management style with a single telling word: relentless. He questioned absolutely everything and challenged long-standing royal practices that nobody else ever dared to touch. And he made it crystal clear to everyone around him that the days of powerful courtiers making massive decisions behind closed doors with zero accountability to anyone were officially finished. And what all of this was doing to Charles as a man, not just as a king, but as a real human being, was something far darker than any official palace source was ever willing to admit. A Radar Online insider revealed that the whole Andrew situation had become almost too much for Charles to bear, and his physical health had deteriorated, specifically because of the crushing weight of it all. He had reportedly confessed to those closest to him that he felt completely and utterly betrayed by Andrew, that he had been repeatedly lied to by his own brother, and that he feared he might never speak to Andrew again before one of them was gone. Just think about what that actually means for a moment. Charles waited 70 long years for the crown. He dreamed of a successful reign that would be his proud legacy, his great personal contribution to the institution he had given his entire existence to. And instead his short reign was being defined by a criminal brother, a body slowly surrendering to painful disease, unanswered questions about his own role in the royal cover-up, and a powerful son who had quietly walked straight into the room and taken control while Charles was still sitting in it, then leaked a dark secret that almost nobody outside palace walls is whispering about. A secret, highly detailed royal abdication plan is currently being rehearsed behind locked doors. Insiders told New Idea magazine in May 2026 that dry runs were already happening behind closed doors. They are basing it on the abdication of Queen Margaret of Denmark in 2023, an incredibly smooth and dignified handover that the British royal family is desperate to copy. A senior royal courtier confided to journalist Rob Shooter in March 2026 that when King Charles finally steps down, the transition will look highly measured and dignified, using his failing health as the official excuse, because it is the one reason the public cannot dispute. But then came a single devastating sentence that instantly stripped away all the dignity from those carefully chosen royal words. Prince William was already handling so much day-to-day responsibility that the actual abdication would just be the formal paperwork confirming a quiet power shift that had already taken place. That is the shocking reality hiding beneath the palace's highly polished public relations campaign. The grand ceremony will still happen, and the media cameras will definitely be there. The world will watch and call it graceful. But deep inside the walls of Buckingham Palace, everyone already knows the real truth. This power shift did not actually happen on the day of the formal announcement. It unfolded in private strategy sessions, urgent crisis calls, and those quiet, unremarkable moments when an ailing king stopped deciding and the future monarch took total charge. And as all of that was slowly unfolding, the very woman who had stood fiercely by Charles through decades of public backlash and that long, brutal climb to the crown was finally starting to feel an emotion she had never permitted herself to feel. Camilla was suddenly starting to feel terrified. This was Camilla's ultimate last stand. But before you can grasp how far she has fallen, you must understand how impossibly high she had already climbed. For most of the 90s and the early 2000s, Camilla was branded the absolute most hated woman in Britain. She was the notorious other woman. She was the dark shadow that had loomed over the marriage of the most adored royal in modern history. When Princess Diana sat before a BBC camera in 1995 and told over 200 million viewers around the globe that there were 3 people in her marriage, making it a bit crowded, the entire world knew exactly who that third person was. And when Diana died inside a Paris tunnel in 1997 at only 36 years old, the overwhelming grief of an entire generation curdled into deep resentment, and it landed squarely on Camilla. She even needed tight security at events other royals attended freely, but Camilla fought her way back through years of grinding, exhausting, and thankless public service. She married Charles in 2005 and took on massive charities, keeping her composure through scandals that would have easily shattered most people. By the coronation in May 2023, she had won back enough of the public's tolerance to stand inside Westminster Abbey and be crowned Queen Consort without the entire country erupting in angry protests. By any honest measure, it was easily one of the most spectacular comebacks in British royal history. But there was one person who had watched every step of that long comeback with cold eyes that never fully warmed up. When Camilla arrived at Clarence House for her very first official meeting with Prince William, royal biographer Christopher Anderson reported that she was shaking so violently she required a strong drink just to calm her nerves. Camilla knew exactly what she had done to this young boy's family, and William stood there with a completely frozen face, giving away absolutely nothing. He and Harry had reportedly begged their father not to marry this woman. Charles had married her anyway, and something deep inside William had never fully healed from that. A palace insider admitted this without flinching. The deep betrayal of their beloved mother had never been forgotten by either of Diana's sons, and Prince William, being far more controlled than Harry, had simply been more disciplined about hiding his fury until now. The issue that finally shattered William's composure was Camilla's continued loyalty to Sarah Ferguson. The two women had been close friends since the 1970s, before either of them had ever set foot inside a palace. For Camilla, this was a lifelong friendship that had absolutely nothing to do with the crown and everything to do with decades of shared history. But to William, it was a catastrophic liability at the absolute worst moment in the monarchy's modern history. Sarah Ferguson's name had been dragged directly through the notorious Epstein files, released by the United States Department of Justice. In emails from October 2009, Sarah appeared to contact Epstein directly while her business was struggling, asking him for financial help. While there was no actual criminal charge against her, her name was in those files, and her connection to Andrew remained completely undeniable. In the middle of the worst royal crisis in a generation, Camilla's decision to publicly stand by her was something Prince William could not forgive. So he delivered a harsh ultimatum in late February 2026, according to Radar Online. William told Camilla directly that the only strategy that made any sense was a total and immediate separation from Sarah Ferguson, with absolutely no grey areas and zero exceptions. He warned her that there was no room for private loyalties or mixed public messages, insisting that every single member of the family had to be completely aligned. Imagine being the Queen Consort and spoken to like that by a man who is not even king yet. Camilla reportedly erupted with rage. She furiously told King Charles that William had massively overstepped his position, reminding him that William was not the monarch and had absolutely no right to issue ultimatums, as though she was some junior staff member. And then came a devastating moment that must have felt like the floor was dropping out from right under her. King Charles, the very man she had sacrificed decades of her life for enduring intense hatred, humiliation, and constant public destruction, simply looked right at her and chose his son instead. As if that was not already enough to completely break Camilla, what happened next finished her in the court of public opinion in a way she could never recover from. In February 2026, Camilla attended an important official engagement and met with Giselle Pellicot, the French woman whose husband had secretly and repeatedly drugged her over many years, inviting dozens of strange men to abuse her while she lay completely unconscious. Pellicot had recently become a massive global symbol of raw courage by bravely choosing to make her entire court case completely public to the world. Camilla stood closely beside her, eagerly positioning herself right in front of the cameras as a passionate advocate for survivors of abuse. But the public backlash that erupted was unlike anything the palace had witnessed in years, with social media reactions being incredibly fast and furious. How furious, critics demanded, could the Queen publicly hold the hand of a rape survivor while privately refusing to distance herself from the ex-wife of a disgraced man who was arrested for enabling a convicted paedophile. And behind closed doors, Prince William had already told his personal team something that every single person inside the palace understood was not actually about Andrew at all. He declared that anyone bringing disgrace to the royal family, no matter how close their personal bond, would be cast aside. That warning did not need any extra explanation. Absolutely everyone inside those palace walls knew exactly who he was targeting with those words. While William was fiercely ripping into Camilla over the Sarah Ferguson drama, Kate was making moves that Camilla found even harder to stomach. It was Kate versus Camilla, and the royal family would never be the same again. In the tense hours right after Prince Andrew was arrested, Kate jumped straight into crisis control like she had been waiting for this exact moment. She was working directly with top legal teams to craft the firm's official statement, and she sat right at the center of high-level strategy meetings. Insiders at the National Examiner confirmed that Kate was working around the clock to control the fallout, triggering an incredibly fast and furious reaction from Camilla. To her, Kate's highly public involvement was a loud announcement to the entire world that she and King Charles could not even run their own house. A palace source laid out Camilla's stance with brutal honesty. She detested Kate stepping into these matters, and things between them had always been highly strained. Now Camilla was complaining to her inner circle that Kate was actively trying to make her and Charles look totally powerless and incompetent on the global stage. Yet King Charles stood up for Kate every single time she was brought up, constantly reminding Camilla that the princess was only trying to support them. According to reports, Camilla looked absolutely livid whenever Kate stepped into the same room. What made everything so much harder for Camilla to handle was the raw, undeniable truth of how the public viewed them both. Kate possessed a natural charm and magnetism that Camilla simply could not match, and everyone inside those palace walls knew it. Whenever they stepped out together, the cameras focused entirely on Kate. Whenever they walked into a gathering, everyone naturally gravitated toward Kate. Camilla had spent decades carefully rebuilding her public image to appear warm and trustworthy, and she did succeed in earning some real respect. But respect is a far cry from deep affection, and the public's bond with Kate was much closer to true adoration. During the official Trump state visit, palace insiders noted that Donald Trump focused almost all of his attention during formal dinners on talking with Kate, leaving Camilla sidelined at the very events she was supposed to be hosting. A guest who was present told insiders that the difference between the two women was so stark that everyone in the room noticed it immediately. Camilla felt the sting most of all, and the intense anger she took away from that state visit reportedly went right back into the royal residence aimed directly at Kate. In reality, this quiet war had been simmering behind the scenes long before Andrew's arrest finally set off the bomb. The exact moment that turned this cold tension into outright hostility happened when Camilla allegedly ordered Kate to leave the room with a wave of her hand during a chat with Melania Trump. Palace staff saw the whole thing go down, and the juicy gossip spread through royal courtier circles like wildfire. What used to be a managed rivalry turned instantly into what insiders call an all-out war that is now impossible to control. Kate refused to retreat. Her loyal supporters brought the fight straight to Camilla. Top royal aides spoke of rising panic that people in Kate's camp were painting such a bold public picture of her future reign that they were basically pushing Camilla right out of the picture while she was still the active queen consort. Sources said this was Kate's world. She was mapping out the future of the monarchy and making entirely sure that Camilla could see exactly what was coming. A palace staffer laid out the situation with a level of raw honesty that almost never escapes those royal walls. Kate was confident, beloved, and making big decisions while Camilla watched, feeling her own influence slowly slip away. This erosion happened not just in public, but during her private talks with the king. Another insider shared that this was the most brutal clash between two high-ranking royal women in modern times, and neither side had any intention of backing down. Then came a shocking detail that really should have ruined Camilla for good. Yet most people outside of royal circles still have absolutely no idea about it. King Charles had approached Prince William in private to ask for a deeply personal and painful favour as a father. He pleaded with his son to let Camilla carve out some small space in the royal family after his passing. He begged William to leave her in peace, allowing her to keep some of her dignity. William apparently agreed, but here is what that deal actually meant. The specific terms were entirely up to William to decide. Camilla's access to the palace, her financial support, her social standing, and her place in the family would survive only as long as Prince William chose to permit it. And since Kate is already operating as the actual driving force of the modern firm in every way, except for her official title, sources say Camilla is forced to watch her entire future security being designed by the two royals who resent her the most. A source from Radar Online laid the situation bare without sugarcoating a single thing. Once William takes the crown, Camilla will find herself entirely at Kate's mercy. Let that sink in for a second. This is the woman who spent over 20 years being called a homewrecker directly to her face. The woman who fought her way back from the sheer wreckage of Diana's death. The woman who stood inside Westminster Abbey and was officially crowned Queen Consort before the global public, even though most people claimed that day would absolutely never happen. That very woman will need her stepdaughter-in-law's permission just to stay relevant in the institution she bled for.